In this video, we will learn 3 different ways to input values to a sub. Therefore, I will start a sub and I call this sub input testing. You may call it any other name, and then I will hit enter. I wanted to remind you that all the code lines or all the lines of the program need to go between sub and end sub. I notice here that I have option explicit enable, and therefore I'm going to dim a variable a as double. Then we will start practicing our methods. The first one is input box. In input box method, you will display a window or a GUI, a graphical user interface. In that window, you will request from the user one single value for your variable. This value may be a string or may be a number. However, if it is a number, we must do some work or some additional work to make sure that we receive a number. Let's start. So I say a equal to input box, and I will open parentheses, and Excel will show me an auto quick info, which is shown to you right here. It's in this, it says the first argument of the input box function is a prompt. The prompt means is the message I will display to the user so they can give me the information or the specific information that I'm looking for. In this case, we wanted to enter a number, so I'm going to say please enter a number. Note here that I enter the prompt or the message that I want to display to the user between quotation, and it means that Excel will display the message as is without any modification. It treats it as just a string, and it will display that string. The arguments of the input box function, as it is of any other function, are separated by a comma. So I put a comma, and you can see now that the title is highlighted. I will change the title and I will call it input box demo. Again, I am putting this title between quotation, which means Excel will display it on the title as is. The third argument of this function will be the default, and that you can use the default to display to your user or suggest to your user a value that you either expect your users to use or recommend for your user to use. This is an optional argument and is not necessarily. In this case, I will display for the user number 2. The rest of the arguments, that is the X position and Y position, the help file and the contacts, are optional and not required, and we will not cover them for now. Now I want you to note that it says that the input box will be as a string. That means whatever the user will input, when it arrives to the location or arrives to the code, it will become a string. But remember, that's not what I want. I want a double. I want a number. Therefore, I need to use another function, that function called val. And if I write val and open parentheses, note what Excel says. It says val function receives a string as a string, and then change that to a double. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So let's see what's going to happen if I run that code. I will run the code and I'll show you that now you will display to the user the input box. Note here that the title says now input box demo. That's what we have between in the title argument. Please enter a number. That's what we have in the prompt argument. And now I have 2, which is in the default argument of the input box function. Now the user is welcome to enter any number, and then you can say okay, and that's how would you receive that input. This is the first way you can input to Excel. to VBA. The second way is using cells. Now, if you remember in Excel, we have cells. Those cells are rows and columns. So if I know where the user will input their values on the Excel sheet, I can use the cells command to retrieve this information. For example, I can say A equals cells, and then it tells me here that I need the row index comma the column index. The row index will be the 1 2 3 4 5, so I can say 1 comma the column index will be again A B C and D, but in numbers, so we'll say 3. In this case, I'm actually will input from C1 because column 3 is C and then row is 1. So if we have a number in cell C1 or cells 1 comma 3, that's a way to input that value. Another way to input is range. Again, if we remember from Excel that everything can be selected as a range. For example, I can select multiple cells as a range, but also I can select one cell and that will be considered a range. Since the range or the cell has a value, I can call this property of the cell. For example, I can say A equal range, and then now it asks me for the cell number, so I'm going to say A1, and I say dot value. This is here will input from A1. So we see here there are 3 ways to input to Excel, either using the input box, either using the cell, or using the range. And one would ask why we have 3 and when we use each. If you are requesting one piece of information, one value, and you wanted to have the user interacting with your code, then I recommend using input box. Now, input box becomes a little bit annoying when you're asking for a lot of values from the user because they will have to enter and then hit OK. Cells, if you have only one value from one cell, that will be another option to do it. So the user will input all their values in the Excel sheet, and then you, through your program, will read these values using the cell command. Now notice that the cells command use the indices as numbers, which is really very desirable in programming because later on we can change these numbers to other variables and then read multiple cells every time in the program. We will see this in subsequent videos. The next method, which is a range, I actually can read only one value, or I can read multiple values from multiple cells. In this example shown in front of you on the screen, I say bring A, which was a double, from the cell A1. I could have called it from a range of values from A1 to A5, for example, but we will see this when we will talk about arrays.